everyone. Welcome to Trend Talks. Today, I have the pleasure to talk with Kristina Peterson. She's based in San Diego in USA. She's Senior Vice President, Power and Renewables at ThoughtTrace. She worked at Brookfield Renewables, EDF Renewable Energy, Suntech, and ABN AMRO, and Citibank. And Kristina has over 15 years of experience in solar, and she's passionate about potential of artificial intelligence. Welcome, Kristina.
How are you, Edwin? Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Kristina, you're such an expert. You're so much experienced in the solar energy market in the US. In general, what's your outlook on the solar market in the US for this and next year?
I think that it's just continuing to grow. In 2020, during the pandemic, US was down only 6% in terms of new build solar. So now that things are opening up, I think things are only going to grow. I think you're going to see a lot of new markets in the United States that are booming. As you've probably seen, at the end of 2020, we had Texas surpassed California for new build solar for the first time ever. So I think that we're seeing a lot of new markets based upon irradiance as well as various incentives by the various states and renewable portfolio standard incentives. So it's really an exciting time to be in solar here in the US right now.
Since you have so much experience in solar in general, and very specifically in secondary assets, in that respect, let's talk a little bit about that and benefit from your experience, your extensive experience in that. So what are the most common mistakes or challenges that you see while onboarding secondary assets into a portfolio?
I think that there's a big challenge when we talk about secondary assets, what we're talking about is once the projects are built, oftentimes they're sold at COD to another party. And so, someone's handing those keys over to a new owner or a new asset manager. And sometimes the large owner operators do their own asset management internally. Sometimes it's third party. At any rate, when you get those keys, there's a lot of work to be done to go through all the contracts, make sure you understand all the compliance obligations related to that, whether it's regulatory, whether it's who pays the property taxes, who pays the real estate taxes, onboarding all those assets in a proper data management system, and remembering what all those obligations are, whether it's permitting obligations and so forth. So I think those are I wouldn't say they're mistakes, but they're challenges. And I think that good owner operators will manage those in better ways that end up generating more revenue and also optimizing the management of the asset. So yeah, I think those are typical challenges. Everybody is challenged with the same thing. We all have too many documents, too many obligations. One small rooftop project has the same amount of documents as a 300 megawatt solar farm. It's just as complicated. And if you have 300 of those small projects and one large solar farm, you've got a lot of data that you have to manage and plow through at all times. And keep track of the obligations, because otherwise you'll get penalties, regulatory penalties, you get unhappy neighbors and share other stakeholders. So it's really important to get a good handle on your obligations, make sure that you have extracted those obligations from the documents that you have, and that you manage them in a proper way, both from a legal perspective as well as operational perspective.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Well, it's an extensive answer. I can understand that, but it's also kind of, I wouldn't say funny, but we're talking about billions of dollars going around in secondary assets, and then documentation, the paperwork is actually one of the key elements in this. That's right. We're not talking about technology or troubles with technology or technical due diligence. We're talking about basic things like documentation.
Yes, and don't forget, many projects are bought and sold 5 and 6 and 7 times. So it depends on where you are in the ownership level, and things get lost. Things never get done properly in the first place. And you as the owner operator have to deal with that at a later date. So I think having good, document understanding systems, which really help you get through that documentation and extract the important things, is really important. And that's why I came to ThoughtTrace, basically. I think having artificial intelligence augment the human intelligence is very important. I think that that's a trend in many industries in the United States and around the world, that people are using it in such a way that, we can always do it the old-fashioned way. I can sit there with a power purchase agreement and extract the important information. It might take me 6 or 8 hours to do it, depending on how long the PPA is. But why not have the computer go through it, right? And what ThoughtTrace does is it has a domain-specific solar platform where we are actually extracting things that are related to solar and other types of renewable energy and pulling out the important information from those documents in one click. And so it let the computer do the first pass and then have the humans like check it and spot check it. And people see, for certain, functionality, they're doing it 50 to 80% faster than doing it by manually. So right. I think those types of things are where people see a lot of time savings and financial savings, because when you need to find something fast, it's not just finding it in one document. You need to find it across a whole portfolio. You might have a tax equity portfolio in the US that has 100, 200 projects in there. And you might want to say, hey, what's my prevailing wage requirements in there? And that in America, that's the requirements if the project needs to have union labor. If you were to look for that by hand, it would take you weeks, if not months, right? To go through everything. With something like ThoughtTrace, you can actually do that in one click.
That sounds very helpful, to say the least. And does that also include tax obligations? I can imagine with all those projects, you have the tax obligations, property tax, etc. And you buy a portfolio, and then suddenly you find out that some of those taxes have not been paid. It's quite a burden on your project.
That's right. Well, and you'll have unhappy landowners, right? I mean, that's where I find that my clients are constantly letting me know, we forgot to pay the taxes. We didn't realize we had to pay the real estate tax or the property tax. And then people are calling up the CEO and yelling at them. So it's something that is very hard to do, to find those obligations. And honestly, Edwin, it's even worse in wind projects, because in a single wind project, because they're very large, you might have 400 landowners or 400 leases for one single wind project. For solar, it tends to be fewer landowners, but it's exponentially more complex in the wind side. So
yeah. Kristina, so you have managed really big portfolios of solar assets, and based on your extensive experience, so what do you think is an important lesson in that you would want to share with our audience?
I think having good data management systems is very important, whether it's the asset monitoring, the solar asset actual monitoring systems, your SCADA, your DAS, having good people who help you with your operational technology as well as your IT is very important in my experience. And that's nothing to do with artificial intelligence, but I'm just saying that, you've got operating projects that sometimes the operational technology, you just don't have visibility in what's happening in that project because there's some kind of a problem where you don't have visibility on the project. So I find that that's something that if you have your arms wrapped around that well, then everything else can be managed. And then on the data side, managing your contracts and managing not just the operational production data, but managing your contracts in a good way helps you plan for the future. So those are things that I think as we move to using technology in better ways, it's going to become more smooth. There should be more standardization of the metrics of production and also downtime and so forth. And being able to find all of that information in your agreements is really key to optimizing your portfolios.
That's a very wise lesson, Kristina. I want to end with one final question. Is there a trend currently that you're particularly excited about in the solar industry?
I would say just the use of different types of software programs. I think we're getting to be smarter. I think the trend is towards optimization of projects, whether it's predictive analytics or using software in such a way to have the humans do the work that humans do well. I think everything needs to become more dynamic. And I think that something like ThoughtTrace, where you have like a domain-specific software program that's specifically built for solar and wind projects, that's the trend to the future for our industry.
Kristina, I would like to thank you for this interview. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I look forward to meeting you in person at one of our next events. Thank you very much.
Me too. Thank you, Edwin.